Have you heard about Tuck? Tuck? No, what is that? Who, actually? Tuck is the name of the thing in Josh's drawings. See? Miss Hill showed Abby the picture. Abby leaned in a tad, squinting. Then she asked, "May I?" Miss Hill said, "Of course," and handed it over to Abby. While the colorful portion of the picture felt very much in tune with the quality of a drawing you would see done by a child, the dark section, however, felt drawn by another hand, an older hand. The level of detail and precision seemed beyond her child's capabilities. It looked like a clown. "Josh has never mentioned Tuck to you or to your husband?" Abby just shook her head, confused, before adding, "Well, it's just one drawing, right?" Miss Hill opened a manila folder and took out the other drawings, all 10 of them. Very similar. Bright, colorful stick figures smiling and playing. But in the corner of each picture was the clown, drawn in black. Abby started to comb through the pictures. As she did, she noticed subtle variations in how the clown was standing. When she started flipping through the drawings, it almost looked like the clown was dancing. They walked home together every day. It was a lovely walk. Abby looked forward to it. She would pick up her 7-year-old Josh, and they would hold hands while walking from his elementary school back to their house. The walk altogether took about 15 minutes. They knew the crossing guard by name. They knew the other parents. Well, most of the other parents, depending on the grade. And this particular time of year, when the weather slides from hot to a little cool, was their favorite time of year. "Hey, Josh, can I ask you who Tuck is?" "Tuck?" Josh asked, almost surprised. "Yeah," Abby said. "Miss Hill said you've been drawing a lot of pictures of him recently. Is he your friend? How did you two meet?" Josh didn't answer at first. "He's in my dreams sometimes." "In your dreams?" "Mm-hmm." Abby led her young boy across the street before asking more questions. "Is he a clown?" "I think so," Josh said. "He laughs a lot, but sometimes you can't see him laughing. You just hear it." Abby was looking down at her young boy, intrigued. "Ma, can I run ahead?" Abby let go of his hand and nodded. This had become a little tradition of theirs. As they would round the corner of their street, Abby would let go of his hand so that Josh could display his speed, running as fast as he possibly could to their house about 50 yards away. It was taco night. Wednesdays were always taco night in the Roswell house. Josh was already on taco number 3 while Abby was enjoying her Mexican salad. As Ron walked in, rotating his arms and legs in a very robotic fashion, keeping his head still and widening his eyes. "Dad, what are you doing?" Josh was laughing as he asked. Ron responded robotically, as robots tend to do. "Dad is now a robot." Josh kept giggling while telling him, "Dad, you're crazy." "I agree," Abby added. "Dad is crazy." Ron transformed back into his robotic self. "You guys don't think I could pass as a robot?" Ron swung down to give Josh a kiss on the cheek. "No way, Dad," Josh told him. Ron swung down to give Abby a kiss on the lips. "No way, Dad," Abby told him. "Taco Wednesday." Ron kept shouting as he hung up his jacket and took off his shoes near the front door. "Taco Wednesday." "Josh, does anyone make better tacos than Mom?" Ron sat down as Josh answered. "No way. No way, I agree," Ron said, smiling, creating his own plate of taco heaven. "How was your day, hon?" Abby asked. "Someone wants to buy the company." Abby paused mid-bite. "You're kidding." Ron shook his head as he continued making a plate. "This tech guy, Steve, wants to transition us into an animation studio. Says that's going to be the future of film. It's not official or anything. They're just meeting, brainstorming." Ron took a mammoth bite of his loaded taco, crunching all the livelong through. "Wow, What does everyone think? Ron responded mid-mammoth bite. Tempting, I think. You seem sharp, but we shall see. How about you, kiddo? What did you do today? Josh just shrugged. Wow, that good, huh? Ron said, half joking. Hey, Josh, maybe we can switch tomorrow. You go to my job, and I'll go to school. Deal? Josh nodded emphatically and said, Deal. You heard that, Mom? Ron said. You're the witness. Abby smiled and said, Witness? Puck? No, Tuck. Tuck? Like Tucker? Is that a new friend? Abby was questioning Ron as she put away the dishes while he smoked a cigarette near the window in their modest kitchen. No, he's been making these drawings that are kind of odd. Odd? How? They're on our nightstand in the bedroom. You can see them. Ron put out his cigarette and shook his head. Honey, why do you do this? Do what? I love you. It's why you're a great mom. But you get so worked up. He's a kid. Before Abby could even respond, Ron kept going. A boy, too. Boys are weird. We don't get smart until way later. Abby was smiling, charmed by Ron. Get smart? Yeah, which is why you're so lucky. You found yourself a primetime boy who got wicked smart. You know how rare that is? In Point Richmond? To find a wicked smart guy? Ron crept up behind Abby and started kissing her neck. She tilted her head away. Wicked smart, huh? How many cigarettes is that today? Ron kept smiling as he let go and playfully smacked her butt. Hon, I work in animation. Don't you think it's cool he's drawing all the time? I was like that. You should have seen the things I was drawing as a kid. Really? Abby said, relieved. Oh, yeah. I would draw the craziest stuff back then. Freak the hell out of my own mother, I should say. And now, 30 years later, that creepy kid is helping pay for her nursing care. So, you know, there's a point in there somewhere. So, Abby responded, Josh's creepy drawings are going to pay for our nursing care? Bingo, baby, Ron said. All right, I'm going to go take a shower. Join me. Ron jogged out of the room as Abby continued to put the dishes away, while the soft sounds of suburban crickets filtered through her kitchen window. Who would win? That's a tough question, Josh. I'd have to go with the toad. Frogs are slower than toads, Josh asked. Frogs can hop. I wouldn't say that they're slow, but I got a feeling about this toad. He's crafty. This was the current conversation taking shape in Josh's bed as Ron read The Frog and the Toad to him. What does crafty mean? Crafty. Crafty, my dear boy, means smarter than you'd think. I'm crafty. Am I crafty, Dad? No, kiddo, because you look smart and are smart. I don't look smart, but I am smart. Is Mom crafty? Mom? Ron said, smiling, as he looked up and saw her standing in the doorway. Mom is the craftiest of the crafty. All right, I think that's bedtime, Abby said, coming inside to sit on his bed. Good night, Josh, Abby said, kissing his forehead. Sleep tight. Good night, Mom. Good night, buddy, Ron said, kissing his forehead. Sleep tight. Good night, Dad. Ron and Abby both walked out until Ron stopped by the doorway. Nightlight? Josh smiled and nodded. You got it. Ron turned on the tiny orange nightlight and then kept Josh's door open just a couple inches. These are great. Great? Abby said in response, surprised. Ron was in bed next to her looking at Josh's drawings. Yeah, you should have seen mine at his age. These blow my stuff out of the water. Look at the level of detail on this thing in the corner. That's great stuff, hon. You don't think that's a little disturbing? He has an imagination. Boys have imaginations. I had one. I made a career out of it. Abby turned back over onto her side, a bit dejected. Ron noticed this and tried to sympathize. He's got baseball tomorrow morning. I can talk to him after practice if you want. Abby kept staring at the ceiling. Do you think I worry too much? Ron put the drawings back into the folder. Yes. It's a good thing. It's one of the many reasons I love you. Many, 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 many reasons. Ron shut off his light next to his side of the bed. "Good night, my love," Ron said, quickly getting comfortable, mere seconds from passing out. "Good night," Abby said as she continued to stare up at the ceiling until she reached over to turn off her light next to her side of the bed. She took a deep breath and then closed her eyes. Empty. That was Ron's immediate reaction when he reached over towards Abby's side of the bed during the middle of the night and felt nothing. With one eye open, Ron turned to look up. Abby was not in bed. He checked his clock. 2:37. Ron got up, groggy, and walked into the hallway. He saw Josh standing at the opposite end of the hall, staring into the corner of a wall. Ron rubbed his eyes as he made his way over towards him. He spoke in whispers, trying to keep him calm. "Hey, buddy, you okay?" Josh spoke back even softer. "He told me not to watch." Ron was still half asleep and barely heard him, so he leaned down. "What's that, bud?" Josh turned around. His eyes were filled with water. He pointed towards his room. "He told me not to watch." Ron turned around. His face quickly turned pale, his mouth trembling, his eyes flickering open rapidly. His hands and arms started shaking as he clutched his chest. It was Abby. She had hung herself inside Josh's bedroom. The town nearly shut down. When word got out that Abby Roswell had hung herself, it was all anyone could think about, all anyone could talk about. It was a shock to the heart of this whole community, to everyone who knew her, everyone who loved her. Abby was a beacon of happiness and joy. The first question everyone asked was the same. Why? Nobody knew, least of all Ron, the person who was being asked why over and over and over again. Why? Why, Ron? Why did she do it? What aren't you telling us? That was the question everyone wanted to ask but couldn't. They wanted to, desperately, more than anything. Anyone who knew Abby loved her, which meant they couldn't breathe without wanting to know why someone like that would do something like that. It didn't make sense. It was the constant talk of the town, a town in which half the residents could not sleep knowing that one of their own, one of their best, was capable of ending it. For reasons that remained unclear, the only person who could make sense of it was Ron. And yet here he was, more shocked than anyone, more devastated than anyone, more heartbroken than anyone. It was a nightmare he couldn't wake out of. Anytime he closed his eyes, he saw it. He saw her, what used to be her, hanging in his son's bedroom. He ran into his son's room, got her down, called the cops, frantically yelling for them to come right away. There had been an accident. He couldn't form coherent sentences. He tried to resuscitate her, even though he didn't know how to resuscitate someone. It felt like his bones were going to burst out of his chest. He did all of this while his son sat in the doorway, watching. When the cops came, he explained what happened. They asked if his son had seen it. He told them that when he found his son, he said his mother had told him not to watch. He broke down again. He collapsed. One of the cops got a blanket and draped it over as he sobbed uncontrollably for the next 5 minutes. He kept trying to stand, but any time he tried, his legs would turn to jello, and he would have to sit down. He would shake his head and tell the cops that he couldn't understand. He just couldn't. He thought she was happy. He was rambling. The cops were now sitting on the driveway cement with him. One of the cops knew Ron. He knew Abby, too. He had to walk away so that he didn't cry in front of Ron. He had one of the other cops finish the interview so he could briefly break down in private behind his squad car. The funeral was an avalanche of heartbreak. The outpouring of support was astonishing. It felt as if the entire town showed up to pay their respect. Ron was borderline catatonic. He barely spoke at all prior to the eulogy. One by one, people would come up, pay their respect, tell him how sorry they were. They would cry. They would hug him. They would tell him how much she meant to them. All Ron could do was hold Josh's hand. It was the only thing he could do to tell himself that he was alive still, that Abby had taken her own life, and that he had to spend the rest of his life without her. His eulogy was hard to watch. As hard to watch as you could imagine, given their shared history and how much the people in this big room cared about them both. He spoke about how they first met in high school math class. He said she caught him cheating off her paper. That got a laugh. The laugh felt good. Abby and Ron were high school sweethearts. They'd gotten married at the age of 25, had Josh 5 years later. They were the couple everyone loved to be around because they never fought. They never made you feel uncomfortable. They exuded warmth exemplified by how sweet they were to each other at all times. They were the cliché perfect couple. Ron spoke about some of their favorite memories together. How she had become an extension of who he was. How she seemed to know him better than he knew himself. How they had made... He took a long pause. He had to collect himself. His pause made everyone reach for Kleenex. It's hard to watch some people cry, for whatever reason. Maybe they just have one of these sweet faces. Ron had one of those faces. He sniffled, took a long breath, and finished his thought. How they had made Josh. How Josh was now an extension of how much they loved each other. He had more written down, much more, but he couldn't get through it. Not then. Maybe not ever. It hurt too much. So he sat down in the front row and let the rest of the room pay their respects at the podium. He held Josh's hand the whole time. Standing by her casket, receiving condolences, hugs, and tears for nearly 5 hours, he could finally see the end of the line. The room was beginning to clear out. After the last person gave Ron their condolences, Ron turned and asked his mother, who was standing nearby, if she could take Josh outside for a moment. Maybe get him a soda from across the street at State Line Deli. Josh liked State Line Deli because they had cheap candy, and sometimes the owner, Luca, would toss in an extra piece of candy in there for free. It was now just Ron, alone, with the casket. Ron sat in the front row of the viewing room, staring at her. Her face was visible, eyes closed. She seemed so peaceful. So Ron closed his eyes too. When he opened them, he hoped maybe this would have all turned out to be a dream, a nightmare. But it was real. She was still there, in that casket, with her eyes closed. Ron felt a hand on his shoulder. He expected it to be his mother, but it was not. Sitting next to him now was Vince. Soon as Ron saw him, it all came crashing back. Just when he thought he could take a break from breaking down, Vince brought it right back up to the surface and burst the dam. He buried his face into Vince's shoulder as Vince held him tightly, never saying a word. Dock bar. That's what they called having a couple beers at the end of the dock where they couldn't afford to keep a boat, but could most definitely afford to hang out after hours and stare at the black ocean. Occasionally rocking back and forth from the waves, this had become somewhat of a hangout for Ron and Vince when the girlfriends or wives were out of town and the boys had the night to themselves, as far back as high school, when Vince could buy beer without a fake ID. Vince sipped his beer. Newcastle, his favorite. He unbuttoned his tie just a tad. Vince always looked good in suits. He was 6'4", slender, the kind of guy who had been told once or twice or 100 times that he could be an actor or a model or a comedian. His response? Why do any of that when you can live in Maui and teach people to surf? Good answer, they would say. Vince finished his beer and then put the empty into the nearby cooler. Instead of grabbing a fresh beer, he got a fresh smoke. Newport. Newcastle and Newport. Vince's favorites. After he exhaled, he got a fresh beer and held it out towards Ron, who sat nearby. Ron waved him off. Vince cracked it open and left it next to his waist. Doris was there. Ron nodded. Yeah, I saw her. Vince sipped his beer before adding, Still looks good. Ron shook his head, smiling, and said, She's got to be north 70 at this point. Vince continued, She definitely saw me. I'll tell you that much. I thought the old gal was going to faint when we locked eyes. And by the way, 70 is the new 25. Ron had to close his eyes so he wouldn't start laughing. You can't teach that kind of heat. You know what I'm saying, Ronnie? That old broad still hums. I might have to give the nursing home a call. See what time they play bingo. You feel me, Ronnie? Ron put his head down. He couldn't help but laugh a little. This is why Ron loved Vince. Because even in his darkest moment, a moment so dark he couldn't imagine it, Vince knew how to make him laugh. He had been doing it for over 2 decades, and it never meant more than it did right now, at the dock bar. Ron spoke without opening his eyes. It was like a shield, a full plate of armor on his chest. I don't know how I can go back to that house, Vince. Vince paused. He knew his friend well enough to know what he should say. It's going to be hard, Ronnie. But you're going to do it. Because we got a special little guy in that house who's going to need you to keep waking up every day, getting out of bed every day, treating every day like it matters. Because he's got a lot of days left. So we really got to make him count. Ron was nodding. His eyes were still closed. He had his head down. But he was nodding. Vince knew the key to making him get that head back upright was to talk about the kid, Josh. The office got tense. They had not expected Ron back so soon. Abby passed on a Wednesday. It was now Monday. Ron was lightly waving to everyone as he walked through the office to his desk. Within 2 minutes, as he began to look through his drawings, he felt a hand patting him on his shoulder and then a whisper of solace. Ron smiled and thanked them before they walked away. Within 2 minutes, another hand patted him on the shoulder. This time, the woman patting asked Ron if he could go pay a visit to his boss, Bert. Bert was barely 40, but he had an elevated sense of wisdom and adventure that comes from running a wildly successful visual effects company that was very popular among major Hollywood studios. Bert started with a deep breath and then said, Ron, I can't even. Ron knew how that sentence ends. He had spent the past 5 days interacting with people who were too heartbroken to even finish their sentences. Ron thanked him, twice. Bert quickly wiped a tear away and then told Ron if he wants to take more time, he can. He can take as much time as he needs. Ron thanked him again, but then he told him, "I need to work, Bert. I need the distraction." "Of course," Bert said. "Whatever you need, Ronnie." Another thing he had heard nonstop over the past 5 days. People telling him, whatever you need. What he needed, he couldn't get. His wife. He needed her back. But he never would. And the reality of that seemed to magnify with each passing moment that she was not with him. Grandma hung out with Josh all day. They played board games, they went to the park, they made some drawings. Grandma would have to excuse herself periodically to mourn. Abby had become a daughter to her. Sometimes she would see Abby in Josh. The way he smiled, or the way he would shrug, how he ate an apple. Things that people used to say about her and Ron. Ron came home late, later than normal. He could have been home by 8, but he needed a minute before heading back into that house. Abby not being there when he got home was going to be a tough pill to swallow. The funeral and procession were almost surreal. His job and coming home afterward to eat with his family meant he was stepping back into reality. His new reality. "How'd he do?" That was Ron's first question to his mom when they were able to speak far away enough from Josh's ears. His mom told him that he did great. They played a lot. He seemed in good spirits. They ate together. Grandma made spaghetti and meatballs, one of Josh's favorites. She was staring at Ron, waiting for him to bring up a certain subject, until he did. "Hey, buddy, I was thinking tomorrow Grandma could take you to see a friend of mine." "Who is your friend?" Josh asked. "My friend is a doctor. She talks to people. Kids who have lost people that they loved a lot." "Daddy, how do you lose a person?" "Losing is how we..." Ron looked to his mom for help. She intervened. "Josh, losing is a nice way of saying someone has passed away. Like Mommy. Would you come with me tomorrow so we can talk to someone about her? Would you come with me? Is that okay?" Josh nodded. "Thank you, sweetheart," Grandma said. Ron slept on the couch. What little sleep he got, which was minimal, he wasn't ready to go back to bed. Not yet. As soon as sun broke, he put on his sweatpants and went for a run. A very long run. It was his longest run in years. Work was vital. Ron was locked in all day. There was a new script being developed about kids who got shrunk to the size of ants and must try to survive in their backyard. Ron was storyboarding, illustrating scenes and sequences to plan out the visual storytelling of the film. This involved creating a series of drawings to map out camera angles, action, scene composition. He got more done that day than he typically does in a week, and he was a good worker normally. But now he had an extra level of incentive to keep his eye on the ball. Today was better than yesterday. Far from great, but it's a start. Ron was waving as soon as he got into the coffee shop. The weather had taken a big dip that morning, so it was nice to get inside, warmed by the smell of the coffee. Heather gave him a big hug, and then he sat across from her. Ron asked about her kid. She told him he was now taking tennis lessons, which thrilled her husband. She also told him that they were expecting another one. Ron told her how happy he was for them. They had been friends since college, and now coincidentally they were living only 40 minutes apart from each other. They both knew the real reason for the conversation today. She had met with Josh twice. Normally, she might wait a little longer to discuss her sessions with the father of the child she had been speaking with, but since she knew Ron and Abby, she made an exception, knowing how eager he was to hear that his son was okay. "Would you ever like to speak with someone, Ronnie? I can refer you." "That would be great. Thanks, Heather. It might take a minute to set something up, but I will." "Don't wait too long," Heather said. "It's good to talk. You know that. That's why you called me." "Of course," Ron said. Then he asked her if Josh had talked about it, the moment. It was all Ron had been thinking about that day. knowing what his child had seen that night. Josh was the only one who saw what happened. He had never really asked his child about that night, only in a state of panic right after it happened. But never again. He was too busy being in shock, or heartbroken, or both. He needed someone else to find out, to give him clues, or, God willing, some sense of closure. Heather told him what Josh told her. He said that Abby came into his room. She was standing in the doorway. She looked scared. Very scared, Josh said. He didn't know why. He kept asking, "What's wrong, Mommy? What's wrong?" But she just kept saying, "Please don't hurt my child. Please don't hurt my baby." Ron was floored. Nothing had made sense before this, and it made less sense now. "Who was she talking to?" Ronnie asked. Heather leaned in forward and then asked Ronnie, "Have you heard about Tuck?"